Okay, welcome everybody. We'll call the meeting to order. It's right at 7 o'clock. And as a way to call the meeting to order, we are going to have a little celebration. We have a little pretend champagne. And we have, actually, I thought just one thing to celebrate, our new town administrator, Renee. This is our first official meeting with Renee as a town administrator. So that requires a little champagne. And then we also have sparkling cider. And we also have two other specific events. One is after many months, maybe 6 months, the water team of Eric, John, and Bart, and a lot of everybody else in the town searching for a major water leak, found the source of the water leak, which helps the town significantly in many ways. And then we find out today that John, as part of our wastewater team, is apparently, I think it's WEFTEC.
It's the New England Water.
New England, NEWEA, NEWEA, New England Water Environment Association is the water operator of the year for Vermont. So, good for him on that. Thank you.
We're really doing this.
We're really doing it.
All right.
So, thank you, Renee, for applying, and we look forward to a fantastic number of years leading us as the town administrator.
All right, thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers to everyone.
Congratulations. Thank you. All right.
That's just,
All
let's
right,
go
we're done.
home.
Now we're done. Meeting adjourned.
All right, I guess, that's right. All right, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the second item on the agenda, additions, deletions, and changes to the agenda.
I think we have one.
We have Mike, road commissioner, highway foreman. Highway foreman, sorry. Did you want to, maybe you should come up.
The issue over our roadside mower. We're using the mower the way it's intended to be used. According to the manual, it can be used the way we are, cutting the limbs and brush back. There's a video on their website showing, that's all they're showing is it trimming the brush. So other than me being close to people there, but the operator said he stopped till the people left, but that's been a priority now that if there's anybody around, we're not going to mow. We'll come back later when they're gone.
Okay,
But
so
we're
I think you guys were mowing, and then someone had I guess, a formal complaint and thought it wasn't safe, the way you were using the mower. You're pointing out that in the mower manual that says how to use it in a video, it says, you know, in the way you were operating it is the way they can be operated, they're meant to be operated, and other towns in the state operates it in such a way.
Yes.
But I do understand the safety committee will just sort of take a look at it, and maybe there'll be some additional precautions discussed and to make sure that people are safe.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I think we always take these opportunities to look at things, how we do our work, but I mean, as Mike stated, that's certainly, this is the appropriate use for that specific equipment, and it is utilized in that fashion with the other towns.
A violation or
Right.
misuse of equipment.
Right.
Okay, good,
Thank you.
Okay.
thanks.
Sure. Thanks.
Any other additions, deletions?
So to close that conversation out, will the safety committee then meet, discuss and something might come out of that.
Yeah, so we meet monthly
Yeah.
on a regular basis anyway. Our next meeting was supposed to be tomorrow, however, some of the people aren't able to attend. In fact, our passive representative from our insurer is not, he's sick, so we're going to try to reschedule for next week. But yes, these are the types of things that we do review at these meetings, as well as reviewing our physical spaces. We review how we do our work and if there are things that, improvements that we can make or any other type of safety things that we can address. So sometimes we do that by claims that we've had, or if there's certain situations like this that have come up, that we just, it gives us an opportunity to look at how we do our work and if there are, like I said, any improvements that can be made with regard to safety.
Well, certainly let us know
I will.
how that comes, and
Yep.
certainly as a citizen
Yep,
who asks
absolutely.
about it, yeah.
Certainly will.
Thank you.
Yep.
And so I think it's good to point out that the safety committee's been really, in the last year, gotten more active.
Yeah.
In an attempt to improve safety, obviously, our workers' comp rating too is quite high, so we want to get that down because it will reduce the cost and reduce accidents and incidents. So it's an active safety committee. If anybody in the town feels there's a safety issue or an opportunity to improve, I think see the town administrator,
Right.
and
Yep.
well,
Absolutely.
the safety committee could take it up. Okay, item 3, Patriot Lodge discussion. So I think it's the representatives from the Masons asked to come in front of the select board and wanted to bring up, I guess, some issues.
I did. First, let me introduce myself. My name's Devin Grandchamp. I am the current master of Patriot Lodge, akin to a president of the chapter.
Can you say your name again?
Devin, D-E-V-I-N, and the last name is Grandchamp. Thank you for the time to address you. This has been a couple of times, but something I certainly wanted to talk to you about. But how many of you are familiar with the Masonic Lodge down the street near the elementary school? I'm just curious.
Familiar in that it exists, or how do you mean familiar?
That it exists.
Yes. I'm
Okay.
familiar that it exists.
Well, very much so. That lodge has been here since 1854. And during that time frame, it has existed on that, it has existed in a couple of locations in the town of Hinesburg, but most recently has been in that location since the 1950s, I believe. The former site of that location was a former church which donated the land to the Masonic Lodge, and in 1995 we transferred that to the town of Hinesburg. With it was given to the lodge a 50-year lease with the ability to extend that an additional 50 years. During that time frame, over the last 20-plus years, we have maintained the building as per our lease, and we have also exceeded what we believe is our requirements by the lease. Specifically, the lease signed on August 24th, 1995, specifically to Section 12 in maintenance and repair. I do not know if the town has a copy of this still.
We have a copy.
We do.
Excellent. We've, of course, maintaining a 65-plus year building, it gets pretty pricey. We have spent, probably combined with the school, close to $30,000 maintaining that for various things such as roof and exterior of building, replacing that, sewage pipe, furnace, new electrical wiring, alarms, doors, replacing the kitchen, removing lead paint, and also helping to create and maintain a public playground. As you may know, we share this with several different organizations, including a preschool and a Beecher Hill, as well as being contacted recently by, I believe, the Town and Recreation Department for further use of the building. And this goes back to the 1960s, in which we've had a relationship with the town, being specifically that the town approached us in the 1960s to utilize our space for extra classroom space, which we permitted at the time when the actual building still was in use by the Masonic Lodge. But times have gotten tough, and certainly as we approached this in the 90s, we made the hard decision to transfer this to the town. And we continue with this current lease, but we certainly, like many other fraternal and community organizations, have suffered financially and through lack of membership. All things that we have been addressing in the past few years, but recently we did replace the furnace, which caused us to dip into our funds to a point where for our long-term investments, which had been really in existence for the last 100 years, being built by my predecessors, we really cannot look to the future and say that we can replace what belongs to the town for the future. One more project probably of which we see a couple could really push us over the edge. And it being a town building, we believe we have done more than our fair share of what the maintenance clause actually states that we should be responsible for. Also to the lease, it indicates that the building is to be inspected annually. I do not know the last time that actually occurred. Right now, just seeing a couple of things inside the building that need to be done are windows and doors that have not been replaced and are original to the building. It is actually, in one spot, you can actually look outside the front door of that building and look outside. It is not a very decent thing to see of a building that is so enshrined in the town of Hinesburg. But going forward, we would ask the town to possibly look at investing in their site, especially considering that it is very much growing as part of multiple community organizations, and including the school, which has sent some representatives here, which, again, when we upgrade, we have to upgrade to school code, so that makes it much more expensive for us. We have recently raised dues, and of course, we're always increasing membership through various means, but as you can see, our membership here, I've done a sort of like a little bit of a membership track over the since 1856 when our records go back to, and as you can see, like many organizations, not going up but going down.
So does that chart start in 1850?
It starts in 1856.
Thank you.
I tracked the Grand Lodge of Vermont records going back to 1856 for Patriot Lodge records, counting, we call full members our Master Masons, and followed that through the current period. And as you see, it kind of spikes in World War II, when a lot of men returning from war were really looking for that sort of fraternal friendship and other things like that. But many don't wish to be involved much. And again, with that lack of funds, we can no longer maintain, we can certainly maintain what we see here, but we cannot continue to replace as we have been doing without asking the town for any assistance, especially for a building we do not own. So I certainly welcome any questions that you may have, but
It's interesting to note that the high point of membership was at the signing of the lease, at the same time the lease was signed, in the mid-'80s.
it was certainly a controversial decision and for members. I certainly was not around back then as a member, but
Yeah.
I don't know if that led to the decline. The average age of a Mason in the state of Vermont is close to 70 years old at the current time. Many of those members either probably moved out of state, died of natural deaths, or otherwise just are no longer members. I don't know what contributed to that decline, whether or not it's a membership at IBM, other employers in the area that came and left, various things, but certainly amongst our current membership, which stands at about 60, we certainly have taken efforts to increase where we are financially and by doing different sort of activities. But that point aside, there are still things that I have to say as the representative of my organization, which I believe that town should be responsible for with this building, and that is not being looked to.
So you mentioned your specific ask is for the town to invest in the building. I'm sure you probably have specifics that you have a list of, which we could certainly have a conversation about. You also mentioned the inspection that, I read that as well in the lease. I don't know if there is a regular inspection that was ever scheduled, but rather periodic. I don't know what the arrangement was. Do you know of any inspections that have happened since the signing of the lease?
During my tenure in office, I have not been contacted.
Your tenure is?
I have been in office since 2016.
Yeah.
I'm coming up on the end of my 2-year term. At no point during that time have I personally been contacted, nor do I believe any of my officers have been either. Certainly.
Aaron, I've been a member since 19.
Remind me of your name?
My name is John Parento.
John, thank you.
And I've been, is it on?
It is, it's
A member since 2001. And we kind of inherited this situation, and I know it's been an issue with the town for many years. We have invested a lot of money in your building, the roof, the furnace, the sewer pipe issue. It's in your records. These are things that when people rent a building or lease a building, don't have to pay for, and we did it. All we're asking the town is to replace 19 windows and 3 doors. And you can go around the building and see the 19 windows and 3 doors we want to replace. We've been an intricate part of this community, and I hope the select board makes the right decision. Thank you very much.
Any other comments? Go ahead, Andrea.
Well, I think Rob Bast is here, and he was on the select board along with me at the time when it transitioned to the Masons, and it coincided.
It wasn't 1857, you're talking.
No,
soon.
I'm talking
Yeah.
about 1995.
Okay.
Yeah. And it coincided with a change in state law and how property taxes were assessed, and the Masons were no longer eligible to be a tax-exempt organization. It also was at the time when the school was expanding, and in looking at the site plan for the school and the need for more formally utilizing and working on the drop-off for the parking lot and organizing the parking situation, we came to an agreement with the Masons that we all felt comfortable with, in that they were no longer able to afford what the taxes would have been on that property. And I think, so there's also an agreement that the town has with the school for use of that parking lot. So I think Rob may have some other information to contribute to that, but I think we would need to, I mean, this is the first that we've heard of this. We have from time to time, the Masons have come and we have supported and paid for portions of those upgrades that have happened.
I think specifically the sewer
The sewer,
line.
yeah, yeah. And I think that when we had our buildings and facilities personnel, he was more aware of maybe what some of the issues were in the building.
I'd just like to add to everything Andrea said is pretty much on the mark. And the the original negotiation with the Masons came when, if I recall correctly, Masons came to the town because of this impending difficulty with the taxes, and also because they were looking to, you know, have a deal where it would be financially advantageous to them. And the school, by the same token, was faced with a mandate for having a certain amount of open space, which they did in order to remain in the same location. So this was a very cooperative effort, and it was a, you know, I was spearheading the discussion at the time. And the Masons, our goal as a select board was to keep an important, historic, long-standing organization active in Hinesburg if we could do so. It was a Masons contribute and have, you know, historically and contributed in many ways to the community. So this was the deal that was struck in return for basically the control of the land, which enabled the school to continue to operate and to expand in the same location. The other piece of this was that if the Masons' building site was ever needed for something else, that like there was talk about having a different gym or expanding or a community facility or anything else that we as a town might want to do, if we wanted to have a community recreation facility or something like that, that we would accommodate a Masonic temple in the design of that building so that they would be able to continue to operate. So those are the couple of other little pieces that I remember from the discussion. Everybody, it all worked out, and everybody, and the school ended up being able to expand. And so far, there hasn't been any need to change that building, but it has continued to operate and needs, apparently needs some renovation. So.
I just want to say that, oh God, when I came here last year to get approval for the gas hookup, I did bring up the fact that this was an issue, and you can check your records. You have them. And we really want to keep our home. So I hope you guys go our way. There you go, Brother Dave. Nothing to say?
It also has to be entirely noted here that it's not just the Masonic Lodge that meets there. You do have a preschool which provides quality as well as discounted early childhood education, which is one of the finest programs in all of Chittenden County. If we go, they likely will as well. They sublet from us, and I don't know if we would exist without them, and vice versa. And I would be remiss to mention, not to mention how important it is to have something like that in this town. They have existed in that space for as long as I've been a member, and I really hope that we can continue to meet in that space because it is not only convenient, but both groups do tremendous good for this town. And I thank you for your time.
So, did you want to say?
I would just like to make one correction to what Rob said, that in reading in the lease that there is an agreement that if the town wanted to use that building, which Rob referred to, and we don't have an obligation to provide the building to the Masons. We have an obligation to provide meeting space that meets your size and requirements, but it's not the whole building. So.
Yeah, we're working right now on with the recreational Jen.
Yes.
Is her name?
Yeah.
And she wants to hold a yoga class there, and I'm going to visit her hopefully tomorrow to get that all squared away.
Yeah.
And hopefully that the town, as long as it doesn't interfere with the present tenants of the building, we are open to its uses.
I mean, I think I would add that it is a very well-utilized building by the community, yeah.
Yeah, I guess what I'd like to see is an estimate for the repairs, the upgrades, windows and doors.
Can we get somebody to do that?
No, I don't. I read the lease and really it puts the onus on you folks to repair the building. I'm open to,
It says to maintain the building, not to repair the building.
well, we could debate that tonight, but I mean.
No, I don't want to debate that. Yeah.
Right.
I will bring up, it says, tenant agrees to maintain the leased premises, any nursery school playground, and any other portion of the land and premises used by the tenant in a condition similar to or better than their current condition, including structural repairs and any other repairs whatsoever. That's what it says. Now, it sounds like the select board's, willing to talk about it. Clearly, you're providing a service, and you're also getting a service. And, you mentioned we own the building, that's correct, but you also get to rent it for 50 years for $1 a year. So it's not a typical rental situation. So, we'll characterize it the way it is. That's the way the lease is. But we're certainly, we see, I think what we're seeing is the nursery school is, has a lot of value for the town, its location and the way it interacts with the school. There's no question about it. Your organization provides a lot for the town. So I think, there's some questions to ask, and, I'm not sure anybody here is ready to spend the town's money for that building right at this point, but we could certainly open up that discussion. Marilee, did you want to?
So I understand that you want help right now because your membership has dropped and you're really strapped financially, and it makes sense, and you do give a lot of value to the town. And so you said 17 windows and 3 doors. That's what you're asking for now, but are you thinking that in the future when it needs a new roof and maybe it needs to be pointed because it's an old stone building, are you thinking that you're going to continue to be asking the town for money for these capital improvements?
You need to use the microphone only because, so people, on TV, you're on TV.
Sorry, during my tenure, my predecessor, JT, I would say 6 years ago, replaced the whole roof, fixed the external structure, including the mortar and all that. Not only that, the school has installed fire doors, installed a whole new electrical system for safety for the kids. They've removed lead paint from the building because the building was built in 1954. And we still have lead paint on the other side, but they're okay with that, I guess. We have done many structural changes. The furnace, getting the gas hooked up. And so we're not here to ask for a handout. This is an historical building. It's a museum. It's the only museum you have in this town. There are records dating back to 1854, pictures of people who were your forefathers. Antiques. I mean, it's a museum, and we're kind of reluctant at our last meeting to have the hall for the yoga class, but we felt that it would be a good olive branch to the town to allow this. And we hope that Jen will, we have a kind of a lease thing, don't grab the swords off the walls and stuff like, we got a lot of antiques in the building. So I'm just saying, to preserve some of the Hinesburg's culture, you're going to miss out.
So I'll repeat my question again because I didn't really understand whether you answered it. I agree with you. This is a very valuable resource for the town. It's a historic building. I take the yoga class in there, so I see all those antiques, and I don't dare touch them, but I do enjoy looking at them and wondering about them. Are you asking for this just one-time help for the 17 windows and 3 doors, or do you expect that you're going to need help in the future? That's really my question.
We don't expect anything in the future. As we have stated, we have a long and continued and proven history of replacing those items in that building. That's indisputable. We could argue semantics here all day in what's in paragraph 12, repair versus replace. We are looking at a very big need at this current time, which is that the replacement of those items which are 70 years old. We have taken significant efforts to improve our financial situation at the current time and to rework and continue to have a sufficient amount of money to replace and repair other things that may come along. But at the current time, those certainly are items that need to be replaced, not repaired. And that is what is in paragraph 12.
Can I didn't know if somebody from the Hinesburg Nursery School wanted to say something. I mean, I don't, there's no question about the value there, but, you know, and I'm also curious at what the Hinesburg Nursery School pays to lease the space.
I'm sorry.
What the Hinesburg Nursery School pays or has paid to remain in that space.
Currently, and as far as I know from our records dating back to the 90s.
You should identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Jessica Mason. I'm the nursery school board president this year. We currently pay $300 annually to the Masons, in addition to paying building utilities. We have been discussing, we've had conversations with the Masons about their current situation, and our location is really important to our school. And, you know, while we may have certain qualms about being located in a basement at times, it's a great space. It's a great space for our program, and its close proximity to the community school has been really invaluable. And so it's important to us to show support to the Masons, and you know, we will contribute in whatever way that we can, being a nonprofit pre-K program as well. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at now, $300 annually, and we are looking to increase that.
And utilities, you said?
Yes, plus all utilities for the building, yeah.
The $300 to the lodge does not go far. We do pay a building insurance well over $2,500 for having a school there, which if we did not, our insurance would be far less than what it is.
And has the Hinesburg Nursery School provided any support for renovations or any of that kind of work?
Yeah. My understanding is that the kitchen repairs that were done maybe 5-6 years ago, the nursery school paid a large portion of that. And we do a considerable.
John, would you?
I can tell you all the building improvements you guys have done.
Yeah, I'm sure you could. I've not been around quite as long.
Okay, well, we'll let one person talk at a time.
We improve wherever we need to. I mean, obviously, our school has to abide by a whole other set of requirements and codes, and we have to pass lots of other things that are imposed on schools for children. So if we need to update something on the playground, we update it. You know, if we need to do something inside, we do it. Obviously, certain things we've needed the Masons' help on, and they've been more than willing to work with us on it, as challenging as it may have been for them to do.
Anybody else on the board? Andrea?
Yeah, I just wanted to stress that I think we're hearing what your request is, and that on our part that we are going through kind of organizational changes. And so just the question that Tom asked or Aaron about getting an estimate, at this point we don't have anybody on our town staff who is acting in the capacity of overseeing kind of our town assets, our buildings, which is something that we, as a select board, need to pay attention to anyway. We recently had somebody from VEIC come in and evaluate our town building for energy efficiency. So I think that's one thing that I'm hearing that you're requesting, is that you don't feel like you have the capacity to get an estimate for this replacement cost. And so we need to think about how, from our standpoint, you know, what exactly is our capacity to even consider this project, because it's not just the cost of the replacement, but how we are going to prioritize maintaining all of our assets. So I just want you to know that we do hear you. It's a question of how we can have the staff capacity to get the information that we need to do this, along with whatever the actual financial burden it is. I'm not saying that we're going to, but just understand where we're coming from in terms of you know, that we have those same challenges that you do in terms of upkeep. So we just have to consider it. It's something that we need to make the community aware of in terms of budgeting and all that kinds of stuff.
I think in terms of getting an estimate, it's quite simple. You just call a carpenter and have them come in, and they can give you an estimate on either just the windows and doors, or windows and doors and the work. It's just not something the town is. We just don't have the personnel to do it right now. I think it's something that could be easily done by the masons.
It's certainly something that could be done by us. Doesn't matter, again, it is a town building, and that is one thing, but we certainly can, if you would prefer us to do that, we certainly can do that for you, but...
Well, it would be a start to at least have an idea how much money we're talking about.
Well, I would suggest that, I mean, I think that's a good start. I think if the town was going to do it, I would really want to maybe revisit our lease and clarify some of that information and understand whether we are investing in a long-term asset. And if we, you know, if it's the windows, if that's the most important thing to replace, I think I would feel like I would want perhaps VEIC to come in and look at it from a total energy perspective, and whether the window replacement is the most important thing to do in terms of, you know, it seems logical that it is, that they're 70 years old, but sometimes there's other things. So I think it's really a question of looking at the lease, understanding that this is an asset to the community. No matter who owns it, it is a community asset, so we need to figure out a way of maintaining that asset.
It's, just want to add a few suggestions along this. It is highly likely that the windows are the biggest energy loss in the building, almost no question. So, but when you have a carpenter come in, you should just look at the frames of the windows. One idea is to replace the windows in their entirety, including the sash and the frame. And the second idea is, if the frame is in good shape, particularly the sill, then and has been well maintained, you can do inserts into the windows, which will look virtually the same from the outside, but will probably save quite a bit of money in terms of the rehab of the building. So I just wanted to make that suggestion.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I've been on the building committee for over 10 years, and I have bondoed the windows, painted the windows, taken the lead paint off the windows. They're bad. The front door is so bad that you can see the street lights through it. We contacted the town during my administration, and they told us that we would have to install fire emergency type devices on our exterior, on our doors to go outside, and they're very expensive. This type of upgrade for our lodge would certainly bring us into bankruptcy. This is the point I want to make to you tonight. We've had a good symbiotic relation with the school, Beecher Hill Yoga, La Platte chapter number 64 in Hinesburg, Vermont. I just hope that, I know you're going to sit back and think about it, of course, but thank you very much.
Thank you. I love masonry with all my heart. I belong to 3 lodges and 2 Eastern Star chapters. Each lodge in Vermont seems to be unique. The one I belong to in Salisbury meets on the town property in the town hall building for a very reasonable rent because the town likes us. They give us a real great, fantastic break. The lodge in Hinesburg, as John has already mentioned, I've audited their books for the last 2 years. If we can't get any help, we're just not going to be able to stay there. We're going to have to leave. The lodge I belong to in Bristol, for some reason I can't explain, our membership is growing. And we have been making money hand over fist. And we have spent somewhere in the vicinity of $35,000, $40,000 fixing our stained glass windows. We do not have to put in a fancy door because we're privately owned. We are a privately owned building, not a public, we don't have to have public access. So we can do what we please. But we have spent a lot of money maintaining that building. It's probably a $300,000, $400,000 building. We pay absolutely no taxes to the town of Bristol for that building. So, as you can see, each lodge has its own set of problems, if you will. So, yes, we're not looking for a handout, but we could sure use some help. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
You don't have to turn that off. You can just lay it on the table.
Is there any more discussion? And any thoughts on where we might go from here? I mean, I think what, for us my suggestion is, one is get an idea of how much money we're actually talking about. Is it $400 a window? Is it $800 a window? I don't know. And then, my suggestion too would be we should get, a legal opinion on this lease and see what our responsibility really is, just so we know one way or the other. And I would think if we were to spend any significant amount of money, more than a couple $1,000s, we would want to go to the taxpayers and talk about it. It's a town asset, and it's a unique position where we have a private organization, utilizing it for 50 years at $1 a year. So it's a little different than, a rec building that needs upkeep. Not that might be a reason not to maintain it, but it might open up other opportunities for the town to use in this unique situation.
Do you know if any grant funding sources have been explored? I mean, possibly for historic buildings or anything with regard to that?
We're exploring all of our options at the current time, including having approached you. But again, funding sources, responsibility, we can't do major upgrades without your permission. So regardless of where we get funding, we still have to come through you, even if we have that.
It's certainly an option that, could be explored.
There's certainly many options before us, but we do feel that the town has overlooked that building for many years. This is not entirely on us. We don't believe the building has been inspected, or anyone from the town for that matter. I don't have access.
I'll note the lease says that the town may inspect it. It's not required to inspect it.
May, but
Yeah, okay.
I'm just not sure to.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, though. We should be looking at it.
To what point does the town look into their buildings? I'm just curious. Again, it's not our building. That's been deferred to you. So this lease was created when I was 7 years old. So there's parts to this that I've read that, again, we can argue semantics all night long. But again, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I would
Andrea.
say you've come to us at an opportune time. I mean, we're beginning to prepare our budget. It's our budget season that we go to the voters in March. So, I think if you can get an estimate and come back to us, then we'll, there's a lot for us to consider, but this is good timing on your part. I just need to stress that, we don't have a fund dedicated to this kind of stuff. It's every dollar that we spend is voted on by the town. So if this is an item that the town believes and that we bring to the voters in March, then that's the way we start, and this is the perfect timing to be doing that. So it's good.
I have just one more question too. Is there any inter-chapter help if Bristol is, if Bristol is growing? Is there any help within the Mason organization?
In Hinesburg, we're in kind of a catch-22 situation. Because Bristol has a lot of members, we're able to do a lot in the community. So we attract attention to ourselves and we get more members and it grows. Here in Hinesburg, we're kind of just struggling along, and because there aren't a lot of us in this lodge, we're not out in the community where the community can see us, and this is why I'm pretty enthused with the talk about having the recreation department here involved with us. It'll help us. That's the kind of exposure that we need. That's why Bristol is doing so well. Did I answer your question?
No, I'm wondering if say Bristol or Virgins, wherever the other Mason lodges are, if they don't have some larger fund to help the smaller chapters with their repairs.
No. Every lodge is autonomous and they're on their own. In fact, they pay an assessment to the Grand Lodge of Vermont. In Bristol, the dues are $55 and $20 of that goes to the state, the Grand Lodge of Vermont. So every lodge is autonomous and they're completely on their own. They have their own budgets.
So the Grand Lodge of Vermont doesn't have a fund to help.
The money goes up and not down.
Certainly the Masons organization and the Shriners, which they're related, correct? Have provide a lot of charitable good with the burn centers, and I'm very familiar with the educational centers, and we had one right here in Hinesburg to help with dyslexia. So there's some, a lot of good in the community that comes from the organization. So, yeah.
I just want to say one thing, that the school has been with our lodge for 27 years, and we've collected a grand total of $801 in rent over the last 27 years. $8,100 in rent. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Rock and roll. Thanks for hearing us.
Any other thoughts? We can maybe at Selectboard forum, we might explore it a little more. Next item on the agenda, Rob Bast, former Selectboard member and chair. Were you a chair at one time too?
At one time?
Yeah, several times, right, yeah.
Several times. It's nice to remind the board that there's actually living board members in Hinesburg who preceded Andrew.
Yes.
So,
I'm not that old.
So earlier this summer, I was at a meeting at Shelburne Farms, and they brought up an annual meeting, and they brought up a guy who was describing how they had reorganized their structure and how they improved efficiencies. And as he went and talked about it, talked about all the work that they had done, I said, "Gee, that's really strangely familiar." And it was all very similar to something that in my second stint on the Hinesburg Select Board, I had helped initiate, which was a reorg of the town, the positions in town government. And when I came back on the board, it was pretty apparent that there were a lot of conflicts between personnel, and I looked into it a little bit and came to realize that, gee, we hadn't ever coordinated job descriptions. And as the town had grown and had needed more help in one place or another, and in my tenure, we had hired our first town administrator, we hired our first town planner, we started the police department. All this stuff happened, and each job description was written up, but not with reference to everything, not as a comprehensive effort. And people cycle in, and it grew organically with some high-level thinking, but not at the root where you need to really compare the language, and you need to have a common language within each job, so that anybody coming in can understand what they're doing and what somebody else is doing. So in 2004, we corresponded with the League of Cities and Towns and hired somebody to help us manage this, so that there was an outside person involved, and we redrew all the job descriptions. And with the cooperation of everybody, we worked it so that would happen. And there's statutory elected officials as well, treasurer, clerk, and everybody cooperated. And we didn't presume to eliminate all the personal conflict between people, but we wanted to eliminate any structural conflict, so that someone who thought that someone else was doing their job wouldn't be in a position to complain about that anymore. It would just, if it was an interpersonal issue, well, that was that, but not for unnecessary reasons. So, so this is, now as I reflected on it, is an action that took place 13 years ago. And I don't know that it's happened again recently. Maybe it has to some degree, but it's something that I believe that would be in the interests of the town to revisit and be useful. More personnel in water and sewer, you have more different ways that the town can operate, and it needs to, you need to be sure, as Andrew was talking about earlier, well, who's responsible for doing what? You were talking about in terms of, who would look at the buildings as what they might need, and how you might plan for capital improvements on a more predictable basis. So, you're getting new mandates all the time. Whose responsibility to deal with that? And then when they have to deal with that, is that still a reasonable job description for one person when you add that on, or for that person? So the other things that this is an opportunity to work with is to discuss with staff at the point when you visit with them. Okay, what's mission consideration? What's the mission of the town as far as they're concerned? How can you reinforce that to make them better public servants, and as well as just their job? And so that's an opportunity. You also have an opportunity in doing this, which we discovered sort of as part of the process, that you have a chance for people to express their opinion, give their input into this. You're giving them an opportunity to contribute. And to the extent that that happens in the final document, you can have staff, to a large extent, own those changes. And if they do, then all the work will take place a little more happily and a little more enthusiastically and efficiently, I believe. And so I'm just here as the ghost of Select Board's past to remind you of something that we did on a high level as opposed to the day-to-day level. That was engaging for all of us and was, it's kind of exciting in its outcome, and not something when I came back on the board that I expected would be a thing of primary value, but it was. And I encourage you to consider it, and that's what I came in to talk about tonight. So.
Well, I'd like to personally thank you for coming in here, and I'll describe you coming in here. It's like a pin, in our butt to sort of say, hey, because it's something we've been talking about at least for the last couple of years, and most recently quite a bit as we've gone through the town administrator search process. Mm-hmm. But I'll, let other members of the board sort of weigh in. Tom, did you want to?
Yeah. We have talked about different positions and how they were going to work together, but I like the idea that you just brought up about having the people who are in the current positions help to rewrite those job descriptions. I like that addition. I think that would be, especially now when they come in and we interview them for their budget proposal, that might be something that could get worked in as part of it, depending on time, of course, but
it's also valuable to have a mediator, someone not on the board who's kind of gathering everything together. You'll need to be involved, one or all of you. Yeah. But the guy we hired at the time from the League of Cities and Towns is a guy named Dominic Cloud, and he has gone on to become the town manager of St. Albans, and still doing that. And the league can provide some really good service that way in terms of just having an outside person help manage make sure everything happens on time. Nobody has time to meet. Right. Every single person, and Renee would certainly be heavily involved in this, but it would be nice to be able to have someone else kind of just at a little higher level saying, okay, well, this is what we're talking about today, and sort of coordinate that and have another body in the room when that's happening. And some of it may not need any change at this point. You may, but the opportunity to involve everybody in a discussion a discussion of saying, well, we're not going to work on your job description, but we'd like to hear from you about what you're going to do.
So as part of the town administrator search position, the committee had suggestions on how we can improve our structure and our process, I think. Mm-hmm. The select board had several meetings where we talked about it. We talked with Renee, and I can say, I don't think we've said it out in public yet, but our plan is we are meeting as a board in the next month, and having an outside facilitator help us to just talk about the structure of the board and the relationship with the town administrator, looking at duties and discussing responsibilities, who's responsible for what. So I think that, the board and Renee, we all could use a good discussion about that and really get it clear and straight, and perhaps even change the job description for the town administrator and that maybe the town administrator assistant, so we get that clarity. And then our second step was to have another, I'll call it a retreat, an offsite, or a separate work time with some of the department heads of the town, and it's to look at the structure of the town and look at job responsibilities. So exactly what you're saying, it's not, it's really to scratch the surface and understand where we are right now. And again, look at who's responsible for what. And we also discussed looking sort of strategically in the future of, not everybody's going to be in that position. We'll have people retiring, we'll have things changing. And so it was really to look at that. And as you suggested, the plan is to use a facilitator for that to help us do the work and not worry about the structure of the meeting itself or the outcome.
The only thing I'd reemphasize then, because it sounds like a great plan to get everybody going and create a structure within which this discussion can take place. But it was valuable and would still be valuable to include all the employees, so that at some point you're touching base with them to make sure that they understand what's going on and that they have a chance to weigh in. And because
perhaps they're the future leaders.
They may be.
Too, yeah.
They may be.
Might be.
Or not. But either way, they understand how their position has worked, and either have thoughts about it or not. But at least you give them the opportunity to weigh in, and then would just be good management. That's all.
So Rob, I was curious mechanically, did this person from Vermont League of Cities and Towns come and meet individually with people or meet in small groups, or did you have it as a retreat for?
No, it was meetings. It was, they'd come in and visit on a regular basis with, at that time it was Jeannie Wilson was our town administrator, and so Jeannie was involved, and Dominic would come to these meetings, and they would sit down and hammer out, well, what are you doing now? And then they'd go back, and there'd be a return meeting. It was like, well, this is what we've come up with. So there's a feedback loop involved in it. But, pretty standard stuff. Just, all of this is pretty standard stuff, but it's the stuff that's really easy to lose track of. And, you've got so much on your plate, and I know. And so this is why it can get pushed aside, because there's, the day-to-day stuff, the quotidian comes up all the time. And this is really important to get to at some point. So I would, that's my point, that's all. So, over talking.
I think also what I gleaned from Rob that's really valuable is it's not only looking at the job descriptions, but it is looking a little bit more at everything that we need to do, not only day to day, but looking forward. And I think that's where just like the conversation that we had with the Masons is that we are so focused, and I think staff is very focused on the day-to-day operations, but really our responsibility is to be thinking about what's going to be happening, what our needs are in 10 years, and how do we programmatically, as well as the facilities, but the programs that we have, the facilities that we own, how do we really plan for that as an organization, and I think getting staff to that buy-in and for them to also be thinking not just on the day-to-day, but they can get the big picture also. They do have a big picture if we ask for that.
Yep.
And I think that's what's really valuable
A
for
lot
us.
of them will.
Yeah.
A lot of them will. Not all of them, but a lot of them will.
Yeah.
And, it would be, I think, to everyone's advantage. Yep. So, anyway, I want,
I'll just chime in really quickly and say thank you. You know, this is all really good stuff, and all of this stuff, the more work you put into it, you get twice as much effort or reward out of the effort. You know, this is all setting ourselves up for success, and we're going to do that right away with hiring. Renee's going to hire somebody for her office, you know, to be you know, shoulder to shoulder with her. So, you know, we're going to get into that right away. But yet, couldn't agree with you more. How we do it, to some degree, it is all just basic stuff you're talking about. You know, this is not stuff we have to figure out or invent, but it is just a matter of prioritizing it, right? Mm-hmm. And making it, and as Phil said, as a board, we all see the value in this, and we are setting time aside. We've got a couple of dates set up coming up here that we're going to get together and not talk about the day-to-day stuff we often talk about on these agendas, but get, you know, this bigger stuff done, setting ourselves up for success.
you guys have to deal with the way things are set up now. With an administrator as opposed to a manager,
Yes.
which is the way it's been for a long time. You guys have to deal with the day-to-day stuff, so you have to be on the ground. But if you're a board of directors for a company, which is something that I've done in the interim since I've been a select board member, you know, somebody else is running the show, and your job is to be thinking ahead and to be at 40,000 feet occasionally, and thinking long-term and saying, well, if we do this, then what happens?
We're in the unique position of being involved.
So now you've got to remember to bring both hats to your various meetings.
Thanks for coming in, Rob.
Yeah. So
Thanks, Rob.
thank you all, and don't stay up too late.
All right, next item on the agenda.
Only 6 minutes.
Consider acceptance of the Jolly easement for Village North sidewalk. Do you want to?
Sure. This is much like the NRG one. At that time, we thought we had both of them, and Doug thought he had, but then when he checked to put the whole package together for right-of-way, realized that the Jolly easement that he had wasn't actually the right, the warranty deed that we need. So he reached out to Joe Fallon, who had drawn up that deed originally, and it's in front of you. And so this is the warranty deed that we would be accepting that easement this evening officially.
I don't have that on my Dropbox.
Any questions?
It's number 5A.
Yeah, it's not in my Dropbox though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'll go to that one.
It is there.
Want me to read it to you?
Yes, word for word.
Go ahead, Andrea.
You know, I don't see any problem with this. I think just one thing for us to consider in the future as we do these deeds is that it would really be helpful if there was consistency in the language for them, because you know, this one is specifically for a sidewalk of a certain size as opposed to the one that we did with NRG, which was a right-of-way. And I think from the town's perspective, we want as much flexibility as possible. I think the fact that this site is already developed, it's, you know, going to be more constrained. We will have it doesn't say that it's a 5-foot sidewalk, so we have some flexibility, but it does say it references a specific plan. So just kind of a heads up as we move ahead to figure out what we want in an easement, and not necessarily what the landowner wants in the easement. I mean, it always goes back and forth between the lawyers, but for us to be clear about what we would be going to a landowner with for asking for an easement, so.
Continuity you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're
and
looking at
continuity and
50 years
looking
or 100 years out, what's going to be required?
Right,
I don't know.
right.
Yeah.
You know, what do we need? What do we want? You know, we might not be affording to be putting trees into an easement now or other things, but if we're getting an easement for, just like the town has 50-foot or 3-rod or 4-rod road right-of-ways, we have jurisdiction over what happens within that. So I would.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense.
Any other discussion on it? You're looking for a motion to approve this?
Yeah. So
And then signatures, I don't really see it.
So once you guys are, vote on this, make the motion to accept this easement, then Joe Fallon will draw up the official easement deed, and he'll prepare the Vermont property tax return and send that to Jolly, Carl Ruprecht, for his signature.
Okay, so it doesn't appear to really have a date on it, so we can say the easement as presented in our select board packet.
Right.
Which has been put online, so.
Well, I can make that motion to accept the warranty deed of easement that has been placed in our packet for the Jolly Easement Village North Sidewalk. Does that suffice, Renee?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Any more discussion? All those in favor of that motion to accept this easement for the Village North Sidewalk, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So, any opposed? There's none opposed, so the motion's passed. And I think, hopefully, next year. Yeah, that's the hope at this point. I think all the Ts are crossed and the Is are dotted.
Yeah, and this is the final step, is so to get this little package ready to go to the right-of-way for that permitting, and then it can hopefully move on.
All right. Next item on the agenda is a very controversial item here. It's a very spooky item.
Yes.
You're the American Dental
Don't
Association.
laugh at those now. That's not good. A good thing to do.
Yes, I did try
It
to
has
be
been.
careful.
That's you're right. It
I
has
put
been.
it in the memo, so it shows that it's actually for the safety of the trick-or-treaters as they
Right.
walk through, so that was
So-
clear, and there wasn't a front porch forum posting that.
Right. Got misunderstood.
Right.
So this is a request by the Creekside neighborhood to close their roads to vehicle traffic on Halloween, which I assume would be the 31st. Is that a Monday?
I think it's a Tuesday.
Tuesday. They've done it for at least the last couple of years. It's a very busy time. It's a great neighborhood event, a town-wide event. And so many people go that they look to close the roads, have some real security there watching out, and
Will this include the new connector road as well?
They are going to, the fire station's going to put one of the fire trucks blocking that road so that people aren't able to enter and leave.
and I think people are allowed to sort of park on the periphery.
Yep.
And I think there's quite a lot of supervision. Maybe even the police chief will be there.
He's usually the
He
one.
has in the past.
One there.
He may not be there, but there'll be another one of the officers
Okay.
there. But yes, it's a well-attended event, and it's hopefully the evening will be good weather so that people are enjoying their walking around through the village, and so.
So I'll make the motion, but I'm going to amend it a little bit from what's
Okay.
in the packet. I'm going to make a motion to approve the closure of Frederick Way and most of Farmall Drive to visitor traffic from 6 PM to 8 PM for the Creekside Annual Halloween event on Tuesday, October 31st.
There was
Is there a
time in
second?
there.
I read the time.
Yeah, you did,
Sorry.
6 to 8.
6 to 8, okay, good.
I second it.
Okay.
Goes to show you how much I'm listening to you.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned visitors, so that if somebody was driving to their home, they'll be able to go through slowly.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
it says we'll go with mine. This
Yeah.
doesn't even mention cars, it just mentions closing
Okay.
the road. Just wanted to clarify.
All right, and I think they have so much so many trick-or-treaters, there's actually a way to donate.
Yes, a resident, Sarita Baker, has set up some, there'll be some recycle bins that are already out there in the main hall, or just outside the main hall. There's also some at Lampman's, so for folks, they can bring donations of candy, and then those will be distributed to different people from the village can pick them up, because they do end up spending a considerable amount of money on candy because they get so many visitors.
Candy and healthy treats, I suppose. I'm not sure what they would be. All right, so any other discussion on that motion? All those in favor of approving the closure of Frederick Way for Halloween, say aye.
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 Aye. And any opposed? There's none opposed. The motion's passed. Next item is discussion, came up the last meeting, I think, a little more discussion on select board members have represented sections of the budget during town meeting, and then it was an excellent suggestion that maybe we actually adopt a section of the budget to start the front of the process, actually developing the budget and follow it through the budget process and right to town meeting. So did we have?
I did. I have it here somewhere. I had it when I first came in, and now I think I've shuffled papers around. But yes, I divided them up. There's not a straightforward 5 number of departments, so I combined some of the smaller budgets, and I'll probably find this after we're all done.
So I didn't know if people had been thinking about which ones they wanted to. I know personally, I was thinking I would sort of wait to see, not that I'll get stuck with one I don't want to do. I think any of them, they're not so big when you break it down to not be able to understand them or participate in the development and presentation of them. But I don't know, I think in the past, people have done certain departments and they may want to continue since they have some good knowledge of it. Does anybody want to suggest one they were thinking about?
The bigger budgets, obviously, the highway department would be a standalone.
That would, yeah.
I was contemplating combining the police and fire, just because there's related information for both, and sometimes it's helpful to hear both of them. And then the recreation could be combined under perhaps town administrator, buildings, facilities, recreation, or something of that nature. I put planning and zoning and technology together because they're always discussed together at the same time. And then with town clerk, there's the BCA, elections, delinquent tax collector, all kind of combined. And that's,
Assessor's office.
Yeah. Assessor's office could be combined either with that budget discussion or the planning and zoning one, but assessor would also make sense. So however, you're going to combine with some of the smaller ones. And so I was able to distribute it into 5 groups, but I'm just not, maybe it's on my desk.
Yeah.
So,
No,
but that was
those are the
generally,
groups, yeah.
that was generally it.
Is anybody?
I'll jump in. I think it's important for me to stick with the recreation. I'd also like to jump in for buildings and facilities.
Yep, okay.
All right, so we got,
So that might be with the town
Rec.
administrator,
That'd be fine.
be town administrator, select board.
I think there's, we also should pay attention, I think, to the trails, the town forest, and the Conservation Commission.
so, it seems like the rec committee would also include the trails and trails committee? No?
Or it could
Yeah, that's
go
fine.
with,
That'd be a different way of doing things, which is fine, because they don't really work as part of,
well,
they work as part of the
I mean, we
budget.
have to, I think my point is that those committees don't have a staff person, but I think they deserve some legitimate attention from us as a board in terms of what are their needs. And so it is,
goals,
yeah,
yeah.
their goals, yeah.
So which ones did you say? Town forest?
Trails and conservation,
Conservation. Yeah, that seems
Oh,
reasonable.
found it.
which they could be part of the rec, or they could be part of any of the other.
It's all kind of the same thing, so
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So you
Assessor
got
could move to the
there,
town clerk,
yeah, or there, yeah.
whichever.
So we got Select Board, Town Administrator, Buildings, Facilities, Rec, and we said those three committees.
Three committees, yep.
And that would, did you want to, did I take it over?
No,
Okay,
I'm
sorry.
just showing you the list.
So we said trails,
Town forest,
town forest.
conservation.
And these are, we just put that out there, we can change them, it's not,
Yeah, they seem to
The
mesh
chair,
together
who
pretty
did you
well.
ask? The chair was, which one?
Town Forest Committee now.
Pat Maynard.
Pat Maynard.
Oh, Pat,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So we'll say Tom, and again, we'll put this out maybe in an email, and then, you know, if people go, oh, I want to make a change. Mary Lee, did you have a?
I'd be interested in doing police and fire if somebody else doesn't want to do it who's done it in the past.
I've done it in the past, but, you know, I think that's great. That sounds
Okay.
good. Yeah? So we got police, fire, fire warden, dog control, and the health department, does that go in there too?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, to see which one that makes sense, but that.
We'll say health department, not health department,
Yeah, the health officer.
Health officer.
I'm not sure, is there a separate budget for the health officer? I'm not sure that it has.
Maybe.
But
I think we should consider
But we
it.
certainly
Yeah.
should consider it, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So we got Mary Lee. All right. Andrea, did you have, we got the highway department, you've done that in the past.
Yeah, I'm willing to stick with that.
And since you're
Or-
doing the town garage too.
Yeah.
That might-
Yeah.
That's why I didn't speak up on that one.
What, or do you want to do that?
Well, that's why I didn't speak up on that one in particular, thinking that it might still be a perfect fit for you. You've done it in the past, you're involved with the town garage. I mean, you could, that argument cuts both ways, perhaps, I don't know. But I was going to let you make, you know, the decision on that.
Well, what's left?
Planning and zoning,
Zoning,
Planning and zoning, technology,
yep.
and
and,
town clerk, BCA,
town clerk.
and all that. and-
I'd be happy to do the planning, zoning,
I
tech,
think that,
yeah.
because you know the
Yeah.
technology
Yeah.
too. So we got planning, zoning, technology, assessor is in there too.
Sure. Assessors in there and clerk.
Or the
We could
town
do-
clerk and BCA. and
Yeah, I mean,
that-
assessor
that's a
could go either
separate-
way,
So
whatever makes sense.
you're
to you
stuck with
guys.
all the administrative stuff.
I will, yeah. All right, so I will do that. Do we want to put the assessor in there? I'm happy doing
Yeah.
that, I don't care. So we'll put the assessor there. Since-
Cemetery commission,
Oh, good point.
In there too?
well, we should,
We're all dying to sign up for that. Don't laugh at those, I told you that.
well, I don't know, I mean, it would be, I think it would be appropriate to try and bring the cemetery commission
Yeah.
in.
Okay, so we can put that in that same one, right? In the
Yeah.
town, the clerk.
Yeah, you could reach out to them and
Yeah,
see if you can.
And although it's small right now, the village steering committee also has a line item budget.
we could put them in there too, yeah.
The planning and zoning one, it might make
Oh,
sense
that-
for
yeah,
energy
that
committee
does.
to be,
Yeah.
isn't that
And
one?
energy.
Energy
Yep.
committee to be
And
in that
then,
one.
and then the village steering
Village
committee.
steering committee
Yeah,
as well,
you're right,
yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Economic development?
And then economic development is the other one I was thinking of.
Economic development can go with Phil, with the administrative
That sounds good,
stuff.
yep.
Does the, so DRB have any?
They were in the
Planning
planning
and
and
They're in the
zoning.
they're all in planning and
So that'd
zoning,
be
yeah.
Planning
DRB.
commission, DRB.
So that's you, Aaron. And highway department, Andrea.
So buildings and facilities and all that is part of
Up with the town administrator,
yeah.
buildings and
town
facilities.
administrator, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'll type this up and just send it out as an
Hoping you'd
email.
say that.
And send it out as an email, and if people want to change, and if, I'll probably write, if you don't have any concerns, or, you know, if we've missed something, let us
Right.
know, we'll add it in there. If there's no concerns, then I think we'll put this out and let everybody see this is what we're doing.
Absolutely.
So that,
One question, Renee. Are we all, do we have a full board for the donations? I forget what it's called.
Agency request review
agency.
committee.
Agency requests.
So
Yeah.
there are 3 members on it
Okay,
now,
I
3
think
of
that's-
5. So they're functioning. I've got all of the, I've been communicating with all of the organizations, and so they've been starting to send in their
Put their stuff
requests. And so
together,
what I
yeah.
do, I organize all that information and get it ready, And then, once the deadline is passed, then I send them their complete thing. They compare, because I have it going to a group email, so so they'll compare their list and my list, make sure we haven't missed anything along the way. And
So it sounds like it's under the town administrator.
yeah, that one always,
Yeah,
I've
so
always
that
done
one
that.
is called the
Agency, ARRC.
And it's worth mentioning, I guess, that the 27th of this month is the deadline for
Yes,
that.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, for the request.
For the
Okay.
request to come
Yeah.
in, and then after that is when they start meeting, they meet
Okay.
a time or
Yeah,
two.
it's a good budget item, so.
Yep,
But there's also a good process too, so.
yep,
Not much necessarily a lot of
Just wanna
work,
make
but
sure
it's
they
there.
had plenty
Yeah,
of people
no,
for
that's
that.
good.
yep. They've got-
Any other discussion on that? So I got homework then.
All right.
We'll want to communicate with each one of those people.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
so we'll want to set
we'll
that.
want to reach out. Once we say, okay, this is it, this sounds good, everybody's in agreement, then we should all reach out
Yeah.
to those groups.
Yeah.
And then you'll be meeting with them.
So
and
I'll be part of all of those
Yeah.
meetings.
Right, so there'll be at least one opportunity to meet when they initially meet with Renee to have those discussions, but it doesn't mean all those people will. I imagine some of the committees might not actually formally meet at that point.
Right.
But you'd want to at least
But you
reach
might
out
want
to
to
them.
check in and go to one of their meetings
Yeah,
or something and
yeah.
just
Yeah.
reach
Yeah.
out. I think it's a good opportunity for us to each reach out to those committees and
Or
let
you
them
think-
know
yeah,
that
it's budget
we know they
time.
exist and what
Yeah.
can,
So
Right.
today I sent out an email, so all the department heads have their budget worksheet, and I sent out an email to have them back to me by November 13th. And then I think, based on our schedule, I can't remember when we start those budget meetings, but there's plenty of time in between for myself and whichever the select board member it is, it's going to be part of each department to really kind of look at what their request is.
Yep.
And so my idea is to come back with those department head meetings, and that way we can, rather than them coming and making their request and not really doing anything beyond that at that meeting, we've had time to look
They
at
give
what
it
they're.
to you ahead of time.
Yeah, so then we've had time to look at it, and so we can talk about, are they on target, is this right, or are there things that maybe we need to make adjustments for at that meeting, so it's not, so there's no surprise, so there's not a difference, sometimes in the past, there's been changes to what the request was when it gets presented to the board, and the department head may or may not have been aware of those changes, and so I'd like to have them part of that process a little more, and so that they can be part of those conversations, and, if there's changes that are being made, they can be, what are the things that are most important, that are the really high needs versus things that that are more just wants. And they can be part of those discussions if there's any cuts that need to be made before we present it to the select board as a whole. That they'll know what's going to the select board. So,
Where, one of the budget items that comes up is obviously salaries and stuff, which are distributed among, but the cost of healthcare, which sort of, needs to be, sometimes as an item to discuss.
Right.
So would that fall under the town administrator, you think, where we're kind of saying, here's where we think it's going to be?
right.
Because
Yeah.
it's sort of an estimate, because it's
Right.
you
I
don't
think
really
that's
know.
something that I would be communicating with each of the department heads and helping out with those pieces of it that require the benefits information. Yeah. Am I moving away from my microphone? Yes, sorry. 'Cause I turned around, drifted.
So Renee, one piece on one of my agenda items. Conservation Commission, they now have a couple different pots of money. They have the Vermont Gas Easement Funds, which are now coming in. There was another project line that they had. Can we just make sure that they have all that information?
Before they come?
Before
Yes.
because I'm not sure they're aware
Okay.
of what they have or what it's for, and I think at this point it'd be helpful. I think
Okay.
We talked about, what, 4,500 that they had for a project some time ago?
Barn fund.
The what?
The barn fund.
It was the barn fund?
I believe that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, but just, there's a lot of things that I think would be helpful to.
Okay.
All right, any more discussion on that?
I would ask that you send that budget memo that you sent to the departments, to all the committees.
Sure.
Just so they're give them a heads up and
Yep, absolutely.
let them know.
And I'll let them know which
Yeah.
department grouping that they're going to be grouped
Do you
with.
is there an email distribution developed? So like, let's say I wanted to write to all the department, not that I would do it without,
Right.
But
I-
are there distributions?
I
set
have
up?
the distribution of all of the department heads.
Okay.
Alex I think he has one that includes all of the members as well.
Yeah.
Of each, I mean, not the department heads, sorry, the chairs of each of the committee. I
Okay,
have one
that'd be
that I
good,
send
so-
out to all the chairs.
Yeah.
But I think he has one that includes all the email addresses of each of the
So
members.
something like that memo would be good to get out to all the chairs of the committees.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just to let them know,
Yeah.
here's the sort of process is coming. They should be thinking if they, are looking for $500 for, I don't know, signs or something. Now's
Yeah.
the time to talk about it amongst the committees and be prepared to demonstrate why it's an important for their committee and the town.
Now, in the past, so we've had the library come in. Is there anything different or anything we want to do differently this year in part of their process, or?
Well, I'm happy to add it to my list and at least contact them. I'll let them develop the
Right,
budget.
absolutely, yeah.
As a sort of separate organization, but encourage them to get their numbers and
Right.
work through questions that select board members tend to have.
Yeah.
Usually they're me.
And I did reach out to Sarah, and I kind of gave her what the budget schedule is, and and let her know that I'd be happy to talk to her and Paul.
Yeah.
um,
Because
for
Paul
the
is
process.
the chair.
He's, yeah.
Okay. So I'll add that to mine. Any more discussion? Next item on the agenda, Town Administrator Report. Anything happening?
No, I've been sitting around waiting for something to happen, but nothing ever happens. No, active as usual, lots going on. I think you highlighted some of the big things, which was the water, that was the significant one, is finally finding that leak that has been plaguing them for months. And so, to look on their faces and to see them, they're all very happy because they've worked really hard at this, and I think they've taken a lot of flack over the time, but, eventually we knew it was going to happen, and it did.
Were they actually walking the lines, looking for it?
Yeah, so this was, it happened at the time when we had the outside,
Consultants?
the consultants here. But I believe Bart was over, and he was over at Green Street and checking something, and he just happened to notice something different, and he followed up on it, and that ended up being what the leak
And I would
was.
think those are fairly new water lines again.
Right, well, maybe Renee can explain what we think might have happened.
Yeah, there was something with the line, and I don't know if you've...
Well, I think what happened was that Green Street came online about the same time as the new well, so it could have been that there was, I don't know whether you told me that or John told me that or what.
I spoke to him today.
Oh, okay.
And the way he described it to me, there's a French drain outside of one of the Green Street places, and there's a pipe that goes under that, and somehow that concrete, the cement, broke that pipe. So that's what made
Into the drain and down,
Yeah, and it was draining into there's
the
a
wet
swamp there, so
Yeah.
nobody noticed.
But I
But-
think
But he noticed because that French drain was all filled up when he was walking by, so that was fantastic
Yeah.
that he was observant.
But I think that Green Street had known that there was something wrong, but they had not notified the town. And so I think that's
On
what's...
their water? No.
On their water,
so it's-
that, because they are the customer.
Right.
And so I think that's something that we need to make landlords aware of. I mean, along with all the homeowners,
Right.
is that it's imperative that when they have a problem, that they let us know because
Right.
that we don't know how long that was going on for.
Right.
I mean,
Absolutely.
we know how much we were losing water, but
Right.
It wasn't past their meter, was it?
I don't know whether it was past their meter or not.
Yeah, it was
I would
their
think they would
line.
notice.
They had
It's their
to, they had
line.
to do the repair work. So
Right.
the repair work was on them because it was
So it
their
was
service
after the
line. It was
meter.
after the meter where it happened.
And they didn't notice that
No, it wasn't before the meter, so,
it was before the meter. So they weren't being
Oh,
billed for all
yeah.
that water.
that's a good question.
Yeah, so that's the kind of things we
Right.
should,
Yeah.
we should find out.
Right, yep.
Yeah.
And that's,
Yeah.
But they wouldn't really know, because if it happened
these
a
people
long
coming
time ago,
online, they might-
when they
they might
first
say-
started renting,
Yeah.
then
They might say, wow, this water bill is
they don't have
big."
anything to compare it to. So that would be interesting to ask them, to
And it's
do a little
once
bit of
quarter, so
detective
they-
work.
And they might not have had to pay, but maybe 2 bills.
Right.
You know, that with an increase, and they, you know, who knows? So, but, and then they also did find maybe a couple other small leaks.
Yep, they did. And so those are in the process of being repaired. So I think once those two were taken care of, they're back in business, and the system is running really well. It's amazing the amount of water that has been regained, and they're feeling really good about not only our water, but our wastewater side. And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
I think we're finally back to in a very good place.
so that just brings up another question for me, the whole Green Street incident. I'd like to know where the meter is based on where their responsibilities begins.
Uh-huh.
Because even though maybe they weren't seeing it through their meter and their bills, I mean, we certainly were
Right.
in our power bill.
Right.
I mean, from that curb stop, I mean, maybe the meter should be moved to where their responsibility begins. So if this happens again, then you would be able to figure it out. People would know.
Quicker.
I mean, that's a massive water loss
Right, absolutely.
over several months, and it's really their responsibility, but they had no way of knowing it. So, you know, maybe that's something the water department could look at, is exactly where meters should be.
Right.
You had
Well, and
mentioned,
tracing it to when it happened, because if it happened at the same time as they came online, which was a year ago, then, and which is when we were also looking, I mean, that's when our new system came online. So if it's coincidental, I mean, I think Tom's right. We should just make sure and make them aware of the importance that.
If it happened at the
And
same
all,
time,
you know, Village
right.
Heights, well, we are responsible for Lyman Meadows, but
Yeah, I think there's a lot of.
the other apartments down there on Mechanicsville Road.
I think there's a lot of things that we could be sending out as, you know, part of the quarterly billing. And among those are some of the things you guys had suggested the Energy Committee come up with for ways
Right.
of conservation, but also these reminders about, you know, people maintaining their curb stops and their
Yeah.
things. And, you know, for all, if you're finding that you're having a leak, make sure you contact the town right away and that, so.
no, I think you mentioned maybe Eric will come the next meeting or an upcoming meeting to talk about allocation.
I think in one of his emails, he mentioned that he'd be ready to do that. Was it
At some point.
at some point? I think
Coming up.
November.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it would be good for him to fill us in maybe at that point, exactly what happened. And,
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
but good
Okay.
good observation.
Yep.
And I think when I got the email, I was surprised he had implied like other people, you know, I'd kind of found out. But I hadn't found out. And I had been holding back,
Right.
emailing saying, gee, any luck with the consultants?
Well,
I was
I
afraid
wanted-
I was going to get bad news, so that was great.
He was holding off a little bit, just making sure that that was it, because there's been so many times we thought this was the big one,
Yeah.
and then it wasn't. So he was waiting and watching the system, and
Yeah.
you know, I wanted him to be able to deliver the news.
Yeah.
So that's
Wouldn't another example of what happened here would be the one at Kelly Fields, same type of deal,
yep,
right?
yep, very very similar.
So I mean, going up into those neighborhoods, maybe there should be metering where the town responsibility ends and where theirs begins, because, I mean, it's the only really way you're going to trace these things,
Yeah, but the mobile home parks too.
right?
All right, and you have,
I think that was really it for me. I mean, John Alexander, his award that you guys already talked
Yeah.
about, and
Good for
the
him.
water, and so.
We should have him come in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this
Yeah.
just came about today, so I didn't want to ask him to
Yeah.
stay for that long for this, but yeah, we could certainly have him come in.
Mm-hmm.
And I did send, in addition to the email to you guys, I sent it out to the entire staff. Just,
Nice.
I think we really need to take those opportunities to, oftentimes it's the negative things that come to light, but I'd like to really highlight some of the positive things and for everybody.
Yeah.
So I
If
think-
anybody from the Citizen or the Hinesburg Record is listening,
yeah.
There you go, absolutely.
our John Alexander
Perfect
was a
opportunity to take his
Vermont,
picture.
an award for Vermont from a New England association.
New England Water Environmental Association Operator Award of the Year for the state of Vermont. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Perhaps that's something we put in on the bulletin board out there.
yeah.
You know,
Yep, I think.
And you mentioned a complaint we had about we heard about the highway department, but we think we're in good shape, but the safety committee will
Right.
take a look at that, so that's fine.
Yep.
All right, select board forum. Does anyone have any item to bring up?
Did we want to discuss the Mason Lodge anymore?
We could discuss it.
I'll start. They do a lot for the town. As far as I know, I'm not that familiar with them. I'm hesitant to put taxpayer money, and I think you've said it right, we'd have to go to the taxpayers. But the lease is $1 per year, and that, I understand the building is valuable to Hinesburg, but if we're going to lease it to these folks for $1 a year, I really think there needs to be some responsibility. And it's terrible that their membership is diminishing, but it's true of a lot of different things. And I don't know where to go. I'm not sure if I support putting taxpayer money into a building that's leased for $1 a year. And the nursery school is $300 a year. I was a little surprised by that. It's nice that they can do it, but there are certain responsibilities when you want to maintain a building that you have to provide some funds. So kind of where I'm at with that request, as much as I want to try to help them out, maybe we can, but right now I'm not quite ready.
Are you guys aware of any funding sources for historic buildings or anything of that
Not sure
nature?
it would qualify for a historic.
It wouldn't,
building.
okay. All right.
Yeah, but it's 1954.
Oh, that was the,
Yeah,
okay.
and our zone,
Yeah.
well, our zoning wouldn't even cover its I mean, you could demolish that building under our zoning. Our zoning,
doesn't qualify.
a historic building is defined, I think, as after, anything prior to 1940-something, so, which isn't, to say it is a community building. And
I mean, I will point out, it was said that might be the most historic building, but we're probably sitting in,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
in
Yes.
quite a historic building.
Right.
or the building next door.
I think it's not an easy call. I mean, obviously, they're providing a service with the nursery school in there. If the nursery school wasn't in there, you'd say, well, what real service are they providing? They did give the town the building, so it's not like the town built that building, and the town got some service out of it in that they got space for the
parking lot, for the school.
parking
I mean,
lot,
the
right?
school
So
has benefited
Yeah.
greatly for that transaction. And continues to.
Every morning.
Yeah. I think what's interesting to consider is that it was a 50-year lease. I thought it was a 99-year lease. So we're kind of halfway through the lease. I think that in light of other things that we might be thinking about in terms of community buildings and assets and kind of longer term thinking, we should think about the value of kind of that property to the town. And so there's 25 more years on that lease. And what potentially are the community needs today that could be served by that building because our obligation to the Masons is really only to provide them with meeting space. So is there a way that we can meet that obligation and that building would become more in our control? So I think it's worth, it's worth seeing and really looking at it from a higher level than just the request for the windows and doors. So let's think about it strategically, I guess.
And I think one way or the other, the windows and doors will be put in. The question is going to be whether or not the Masons are going to be able to uphold their end of the lease without the town taking a greater ownership of the building.
And I would really like to find out how come in Bristol they don't pay taxes, because it was not a town decision. As far as I was understood, it was a statewide decision. So, And
I think if...
And we wouldn't be in this predicament if
potentially we could have somebody just sort of look at the lease and we could ask some specific questions.
Yeah.
The question is, who's responsible to put the windows in? Based on that lease. I mean, I look at it as it's the Masons.
Yeah.
And if that's true, okay. That doesn't mean, we don't consider something else, because we want to do what's in the best interest of the town and the Masons and the nursery school and the taxpayers. Yeah. I mean, there was probably a lot of taxpayers that don't want to spend a nickel to help the Masons because it's not their thing. They got other things.
One of the things that I kind of found interesting in the conversation is the conversation that I guess is starting to really heat up a little bit is with the rec department and the use of that building. So and also thinking up here instead of like down here, this bigger use of this building. If we're at a 25-year span, we have to go. What do we want to? As a town, how do we want to use that building for the next 25 years? Let's assume we're going to own it for the next 25 years, as is. I'd be curious to know what the rec department, what Jen, those conversations she has, how she might be able to use it. And that changes the conversation a little bit, because it allows a more direct, as opposed to through linking, but a more direct public use of that building. And that changes the conversation a little bit.
Increases the sharing of it.
Yeah.
If the town was to put some money into it, then maybe that opens up that conversation that says how much, how more flexible can the Masons be to provide space. It sounded like they were allowing this yoga class to happen, but it also, I was, hearing that.
Yeah, like one of the questions.
It wasn't like an obvious.
Yeah, I mean, is the building used? I mean, I know downstairs is used every day, but is upstairs? Is it used every day or once a month? Mm-hmm. And then how? That's a great conversation that they'll have. Sure. But I do think about this in the same way that Andrea pointed out. Is I'm thinking, not today, but kind of bigger picture. What do we want to do with that piece of property? Do we want a building there? Do we want that building there? Do we want to build a new building? Do we want some other idea that somebody has in town?
A legal question is, after 25 more years, I mean, I'd have to take another look at this, but what do we owe the Masons?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. Yeah, well.
Lease expires the day before 50 years, or some
guess.
Language to that.
There's a clause in there about renewing it.
Yeah.
But, I think there was certainly some controversy around this when it was voted.
Yes.
For sure.
Got to remember. Was it a warned item?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other sense that I get out of this is I don't know how really understood it is by the townspeople that building belongs to the town.
Right, but in a sense, the way the lease is written is that it really isn't. We tried to, I think, at that time, to recognize that not much was changing. That the Masons had owned the building. We tried to write the lease and understood that it really was going to continue to be their responsibility, and the benefit to them was that they were not paying property taxes. You know, and the benefit to the town was, the benefit was to the school. The school got the parking lot, and the town was the kind of intermediary that made that happen. So in terms of the town, and, you know, we didn't really benefit from it. It was the school.
And the only thing I would say to add to that story is that over time, the community has benefited, you know, without, we can't overlook the nursery school.
Right, but the nursery school was there before this happened.
Right.
And the yoga class was there before
that's
this
my point, it
happened.
continues
So
to-
those are community benefits, but to
continues
the
to be there,
taxpayers,
yeah.
those
To
are
the taxpayer.
private institutions.
Right, I'm talking about cultural value to the town. I mean, I know you agree with this, but those are significant things. That could also happen in other configurations with that property, I guess is the point I'm making as we think about what we want to do with this beyond just windows, doors, roofs, furnaces, you know, the whole property as a whole. And like you said, it's a good time to talk about it.
So right now, there's the nursery school in the basement, and Beecher Hill Yoga uses the upstairs space where the Masons meet Monday evening, Tuesday morning, and Thursday evening, afternoon, evening, 5:30 to 6:30. So there are a lot of time slots that Jen could use it for a yoga class as well.
Or any other activity.
Yeah.
Would be appropriate.
Beecher Hill must pay a rent to the Masons.
Yeah.
Probably, I would
Yeah.
imagine. I mean, they're-
Okay. I think what
John
I'm
will have a
going
good
to,
conversation, I think.
on the side, I'm just going to write up 2 or 3 sort of questions that address the lease, you know? Who's responsible for this? I don't know, what happens after 25 years? You know, a couple questions with that, and I might pass them to you, and maybe we could just have some, it's a simple lease, it shouldn't take much to take a look at it. Yes, Marilyn?
So to me, it's pretty clear that, like people said, and what's his name? Devin didn't agree, that they are responsible for repairs and upkeep, but they were pretty clear that they wouldn't be able to afford this. This would bankrupt them if they had to fix the windows and doors. They just don't have the capacity to do it. So I think that's part of this larger conversation. Do we want to maintain this building? Is it valuable to the town? I think if it gets repaired, we're the ones who are going to have to do it unless some other source of funding is found, which is possible. So I think it's, to me, it's irrelevant what a lawyer might say about that lease because...
Well, I mean, I think it's important for us to understand where we stand.
Right, and I mean, if the town does end up paying it, you know, change it, we would want to change the lease, I think, to recognize what the benefit is and why it's our asset, and it's, you know, if it is our asset, then we would do that.
You know, so they've been there for 25 years. He said
They've been there for 22 years.
Okay, so say 20, and they've paid $30,000 in repairs, they said, which probably is right, besides the ongoing heat and lights. And so at, you know, $1,200 a year, that's not too bad. And, you know, it sounds kind of cruel, but if an organization can't just pay their way at a pretty small amount, you know, maybe that's not the spot for them.
Right.
Maybe they need to rent the town hall or get the town hall for free.
Right.
Like they do in other places, so. All right, any other thing for Select Board Forum?
I am trying to take notes, not for minutes, but in an effort, I had suggested this a few times, that as we're having this discussion about town manager versus town administrator, for what are those decisions and those things that we're talking about at an individual meeting that we wouldn't be dealing with if we had a town manager form of government. So I don't know so I decided I will try to do that tally, but would it be appropriate at Select Board Forum to go, okay, would that have been a town manager decision, or would that have been a select board, or is that going to take up too much time for us to get into that talk?
So my suggestion is,
But it-
yeah, we're gonna have this, we're calling it an offsite, and maybe if you just bring your list
Yeah.
in preparation for it, then,
Right.
well, I mean, I would think then we would say, how do we do it
try to do this?
ongoing?
Okay.
Yeah,
No, that makes sense.
so I think that's,
Maybe it's just denoted right on the agenda, you know?
Well,
as
we
it's-
talked
as
about that,
As it's
yeah.
put, you know?
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Any other items for select board? I had one, and it sort of goes along in this same way. We have a proposal to do the offsite from Deb Howard.
Correct.
It has maybe, I don't know, 8 hours, 10 hours of work. There's some preparation ahead of time, the facilitating, and then minutes and whatnot afterwards. I gave a copy. You didn't have a copy
I didn't have a
beforehand.
copy
So I
beforehand.
forwarded a copy to Renee, which I think is fine for her to prove that. But we'll share it with everybody here too. And we'll plan on the
24th, I believe.
24th,
A week from tomorrow?
a week from tomorrow.
And where are we going to do it?
We hadn't decided, have we?
We haven't decided. I know in her email, she said, I mean, it would be great if it was at someone's house, but we could certainly do it at, wherever, offsite. So,
My wife doesn't usually watch this. I can guarantee she's not watching this. But I've done that. I've done that in the past, but I'd have to check because it's at night and, it's 4 to 8. 4 to 8.
Yeah, it was a
So,
4-hour.
I'd be willing to do that, maybe. But let me check to make sure that it fits everyone's schedule. So is it next Monday? Next Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Okay, so I'll check on that. And if that doesn't work, we'll come up with something else.
Maybe the
that,
Patriot Lodge is available.
Yeah, right.
The Masonic Lodge, yeah.
It's not very comfortable.
Okay, so, but we'll find a spot that's comfortable. I imagine we'll get some pizza or something.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Bring a yoga mat, we'll be fine.
So it's really just the 5, 6, 7 people. So,
Yeah.
all right. Anything else on?
So you're going to forward some information, or Deb is, or how did you end
Oh,
that?
we'll forward the proposal so you see it.
Okay.
Her proposal
We,
to
like you or
everybody.
Renee or something?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And anything else for select board forum? No? And next item on the agenda is review the minutes from October 2nd.
Marilyn already pointed out to me, I totally forgot to include her name as listening, as attending.
Okay.
Even though I have her talking later in the minutes.
So is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make the motion for you to get that going,
Okay.
to approve the minutes of 10-2.
And seconded. Comments on the minutes, so Marilee's name was forgot, so that could be added.
Right.
I noticed the statement on the budget review was a little confusing on that one sentence there.
Yeah.
I have to pull it up, but,
That first sentence, Phil said he had a few goals for this year, that sentence.
what did I write? Statement on budget review. Underneath, discuss the capital improvement program and budget priorities. Renee noted the capital reserves have not been included yet. The board,
Oh, there should
I'm
be a
not,
period.
yeah. What should that, how should that, there should just be a period? All right, so a period and a couple of spaces. That might clarify that.
Oh, that's funny, I guess on the online version, that's already posted as a draft. That was corrected.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, and, on the public.
Oh, okay.
I put, that's there.
All right.
Am I in there too as being present? Was that corrected?
Phil, Aaron, Tom,
Correct
Andrew,
that, too.
Renee. No, you're not, that's interesting. So that needs to be fixed.
So it must have been copied from the last time when
Yeah,
you were
probably.
remote, maybe. All right, any other comments on it?
The spirit of Marilee spoke and said,
Disembodied being.
All those in favor of the minutes as amended, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? So the motion's passed. Motion can we consider approving the warrants?
I'll make a motion to approve the warrants from, what is it, last week, whatever the date is. I can give,
Last Friday, I
yep,
guess?
I can give, 10, 12, 17, which is last Friday, right? Yeah.
Yeah, seconded. Any comments?
Thursday.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye? Aye.
Aye. And none opposed, so the motion's passed. And now, item 12, if we have a motion, we may go into executive session. If we do, similar to previous times, we will close the video portion of the meeting. If there are any motions, I don't expect there will be, but if there are any motions, we will come out of executive session to make any decisions, and they would be reflected in our minutes. So I'll comment, there's several items. Primarily, it's just information sharing. We will discuss the McGee Hill mediation Palmer agreement. So legal agreement to discuss where we are on that. We can discuss the CSWD, Chittenden Solid Waste District MOU concerning the town garage and relocation of the drop-off center. Observatory Road, legal opinions associated with Observatory Road. And then the union negotiations, we've gotten a proposal, and we can discuss those. So we'll need, if we wish to do that, go into executive session. We need motion.
So I can make that motion if you want to cite.
I look on your agenda.
Oh, is
How's
it right there? Oh, I have it, sorry.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to enter executive session under provisions of 1 VSA Section 313A, 1 and A2.
Second.
Second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do we need a second motion?
I'm going to make a motion to, the first one is explaining why you're going
Right, so
to
that any
executive session.
premature disclosure of that information would put us at a disadvantage. Those are all contract
Also
negotiations.
contract,
So is that a motion on that?
That's a motion to go into executive
Yeah.
session, and then we make the motion on what it actually.
So I'll make that motion that premature disclosure would put us at a substantial disadvantage for those contract discussions.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed, so that motion's passed. So I think that's it. We can. All set? All right. Good night.